All right guys, welcome back to Aussie Arvos. Today is a very exciting day. I'm really pumped because we're putting the diffs and the suspension onto the chassis. We're turning this, essentially what is a piece of scrap metal at the moment, into almost a car, or something that at least resembles a car. So I'm super excited. We've got a whole heap of suspension components waiting to go in. The diffs have just been sitting there waiting for their time. So yeah, it's time to all make it happen. So let's just get straight into it. All right, so just quickly, I want to address, in the last episode, you guys made a lot of comments about me not painting the backside of this chassis plating. And that is a great point. I honestly didn't even really consider it. You pretty much said that I should have used a weld-through primer across this sort of whole region and backside, because obviously if there's bare metal in here and if any water, which potentially could get trapped in between here and the chassis, it's going to start to rust. So yeah, I didn't think of that. Great point. I've done obviously now the best I can to try and inhibit any rust, obviously knowing that it can't be reversed. It is what it is. So pretty much what I've done, a few of you guys recommended fish oil. So what I've done is I've actually used a mastic, which is like, I reckon it's just about stronger than like a Sikaflex. And I've gone and in between all of the welds around the base, did them all, made sure they're all filled in, squeezed as much in as I could. And then I've gone along the top with fish oil and filled in all these gaps, just piled the fish oil in there. And then I've gone and mastic the whole top. So my hope is that this is now sealed and has fish oil inside, and obviously over time as this moves around, that fish oil is gonna obviously spread right across and hopefully inhibit any rust. In the worst case that there was to be rust formation, I think something else will happen to the car before the rust in here becomes an issue. So I think it should be right, but I've done my best. So thanks to all of you that pointed it out. So hopefully that won't be an issue. Let's get on to this diff and suspension input.
All right, so if you remember from last time, I'm installing GU diffs into my Patrol. Now, these are 4:3 ratio diffs, and the bonus of the GU diffs is that they're slightly wider and stronger than the GQ ones.
All right, so I'm just stripping everything we don't need off the diffs. Obviously, we're replacing a few components with adjustable extended stuff, so like factory panhards aren't of any use to us. Yeah, pretty much just getting rid of all the arms and things that we're going to be replacing. All right, so before we throw the diffs in, there are a couple things we have to bolt onto the chassis first so that we can actually put the diffs in. Now, last week, a lot of you guys commented about coil tower bracing. Now, I'm one step ahead. I'm well aware of the need to brace coil towers in Patrols, particularly with a ute. If you plan on loading it up or towing and that, these can bend. You'll find on a lot of Patrols that from carrying excessive weight, the coil towers actually bend upwards like this. And obviously that's no good for anyone. It can also damage the brake lines on top, the brake lines that sit on top of this coil tower. So pretty much you've got to brace them. Now, to brace these and to prevent any bending in the mounts in the coil towers, I've gotten some Black Hawk coil tower braces by Roadsafe 4-wheel drive. Now, these things are super strong. These are 4mm steel. They bolt in from the underside and pretty much they will just prevent these bending at all. They also use a strut that runs from this up here down to the front crossmember, and essentially that just spreads the load across here and the crossmember, as well as also bolting through to the underside of the chassis where your bump stops bolt in. And essentially you get this like triangle of, bracing that just spreads the load and is going to ensure that these things don't move. I also like this style of coil tower bracing because it leaves this middle section open. There are some other coil tower braces out there that just run literally like a plate between the two, and they work as well, I'm sure, but these keep this center bit open. So, with the fuel tanks or air tanks or water tanks, you've still got this area to play with. You don't have something sitting here in the way. So I do like that these are sort of, not running acrossways. So pretty much we'll bolt these in, and then that way we're gonna be all set to throw in our diffs and we won't have to worry about bending coil towers when we load up the ute. All right, I reckon that's the rear coil tower bracing done. We do have factory bump stops sitting there, but I'm gonna have to put extended bump stops on to suit the suspension. So I probably won't bolt them in just yet, just because I don't need to. That's at least them in now anyway, and when we're ready to do bump stops, then they'll just bolt straight in through the mount anyway, so that's fine. So this is officially the first mod, unless you count painting the chassis as a mod or welding on this. This is the first bolt-in part. Yeah. First bolt-on mod, so there you go. All right, so with the coil tower bracing installed and ready to go, we can now start finally talking about suspension. Because $1 million question is, what suspensions are you putting in there, lift and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, So as you all know, there is so many different suspension mobs to choose from, so many different components and manufacturers, all these different avenues you can go down, and you know, you really got to do your research and find something that's suited for what you want. And that's what I did. I was doing the forums and the Facebook pages just for ages and ages, always wondering, oh, what's better this way, that way. There's so many different things. Anyway, so I think I've decided on something based on what I think is the best suited for my application, and just what is, you know, what I think is the most well designed. I suppose let's stop beating around the bush. Let me show you what I've got. So here in front of me, I have the Black Hawk hybrid radius arms by RoadSafe. Now, they sent them out to us, and honestly, I'm just so stoked with how they look. They look awesome. They look super solid, and I'm sure they're going to perform just as well off-road. So I'll run you through a bit about why I chose these. Now, essentially, the main reason in going an aftermarket radius, an entire radius arm, as opposed to what you would often see, like say in Paddy's case or Dan's case, they've just installed caster correction bushes. These are to suit a 3 to 4 inch lift. So I will be going a 3-inch lift in the new build. So essentially that means I wanted to get a radius arm that is designed to suit that lift. And essentially that is exactly what this does. So these are to suit 3 to 4 inch lift. They have been manufactured with the caster correction in mind. So as you can see here, the arm itself, oh, they're solid, actually runs a center style, a center bush. So they're not offset bushes, they're centered. Also at the other end, you'll notice normally a Patrol runs a mushroom style bush on where it mounts to the chassis, and here we have an eye style bush. So this radius arm does also use a drop box, which I'll show you shortly. A few other quick things about the arms. They're obviously forged arms, so super strong. They are also designed to be a high clearance arm. So a lot of other radius arms you might see, they might like sort of dip down a little bit across the front here, perhaps. And essentially these are designed just to keep it right up, give extra clearance, just so you're not going to be, you know, bottoming out on them if you're doing some hard, you know, four-wheel drive. And I do want to do some pretty hard tracks in the new car, so I definitely picked these with that intention. Not to mention, they also don't sacrifice the driving and handling on road. In fact, they improve it. This bush itself, this style of bushing is actually designed to improve also on-road handling. I think it's a better design, like a Land Cruiser style bush that you'll often see. I do think it's a better design. Hello, Indy. And yeah, so they're just an awesome arm. And let me show you the drop boxes as well, because they've also put a lot of thought and effort into that. So, all right, so these are the drop boxes. And off the bat, for those of you that have seen a drop box before, you instantly notice that these are different to a lot of other drop boxes that are out on the market. The unique thing about these, and what really attracts me to these particular radius arms, is that they're designed for high clearance. So I'll just quickly show you. The way they slot in and slide in, they don't actually drop below the chassis. And so you don't have this, you know, bracket or like mounting bracket just hanging below the chassis to get hit on things. And honestly, that for me was in itself just like a massive, you know, tick. So I really like that about them. And again, super solid stuff. And it all looks OEM. It keeps the car looking, you know, not like some overly modified crazy ass thing. It just all looks real tidy and neat, but then also still has the performance of like an aftermarket off-road radius arm. So yeah, we won't waste any time. I really want to get these things in. I think they're going to look awesome. And so let's just start getting into it.
Oh, that sounds meant to go. Look at that, straight in.
All right, so we got the radius arms in, sitting there ready to go. I've just pulled the tie rod off here because I got a new one sitting there ready to go in. A few of you are probably wondering, and it's probably with fair reason too, like why are you throwing this in, you haven't painted it? And pretty much the short of it is I'm not going to be painting these, and there's a couple of reasons why. The paint I used, like yeah, I think it was good paint, but I don't think it's as good as what Nissan would have painted theirs in the workshop. So these are 2006 diffs, so they're not that old. And from afar, obviously there's some bits on them that could do with a touch up, but I think if I give these a good clean up, I think these will look still very good. Like even that there, just wiping away the dust, the paint on there to me is in still very good nick. So I think with a cleanup, they'll look good anyway. And I trust the Nissan paint, especially on the diffs, which are copping a lot of stuff hitting them. I trust the Nissan paint to last better than if I were to put on my own stuff. And I reckon if I were to put on my own, it's just gonna end up chewing it off with the amount of abuse that diffs cop. So I'm choosing to keep the Nissan paint. So I'm not gonna be respraying them. I'm just gonna give them a real good clean. And yeah, I think that will be sufficient. And painting all these stuff as well, like you really wanna strip it right back to the bare axle and pull everything off. And I'm not planning on doing that. So I'm just going to put them in like this, give them a good clean, pretty much with degrease them down and I reckon they'll come up a treat anyway. So with that out of the way, we can throw these in, bolt these into the radius arms, and then we can start adding our other bits and pieces like panhard rods, things like that, and also some springs. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, she's gonna do a stanky leg, but that's all right. Yeah, watch out. That's the thing, it's got no tie rod. All right, now keep it straight. Yay, there you go. Oh no. All right, there you go, got it. All right, so our Black Hawk radius arms are now in. That means we can start moving on to all the other suspension components that we have to throw in. So luckily for me, Fulcrum has gone ahead and provided all the other suspension sort of components we need. So as you can see in front of me, we've got a variety of different bits. We've got arms, which include like panhards, drag links, tie rods. We've also got everything for the rear, upper and lower control arms, and everything adjustable where it needs to be. Because of the 3-inch lift, standard stuff is too short, so we are utilizing a lot of adjustable components. So that's good that Fulcrum can supply all that stuff. We've also got a set of springs here. Now, these aren't the final springs I'll be using. These are a set of temporary springs just so I can sort of continue building the car and not have it sitting on the bump stops. The final springs will be different. These are only a 2-inch spring. So the final springs will be different. Yeah, and they will come when we get the shocks, but I'll tell you more about that when they get here because they should be coming sort of soon, hopefully. Anyway, so we've got all these components here. So we're pretty much gonna start throwing it in. First, I'm gonna chuck in the tie rod just because we have to pull it out to get the radius arms onto the diff. So I'm just gonna adjust that to what the other one was set to. Obviously this will all be getting a wheel alignment, a full check over down at Treadworks from Nathan. So I don't have to get it all millimeter perfect, but I'll get it as good as I can. Same with all the adjustable bits, like panhards and things. I'm just gonna measure the factory ones and extend them by like maybe 15 mil or something like that, not much. So we'll do all that. And we'll pretty much just start throwing all the bits in. We'll probably do most of the front first and get the springs in, and then we can move on to the rear. Obviously we've got to roll the rear diff in and then do all the upper and lower control arms for that. So yeah, still a bit to do, but we'll just get cracking. We'll start throwing all these bits in. All right, so ready to throw the panhard in. I've just set it to roughly longer than the factory one, like 10-15 mil, but once I got the body on and everything and all the weight, I'll square it up properly. So this is just temporary. And pretty much this is just gonna control the left and right of where the diff sits, obviously, so that's why it's important. So Patrols in the front are a 3-link suspension, and that pretty much means you've got 3 arms or essentially 3 contact points to your diff. So one of them being the panhard, controlling it left and right, and the other 2 being each of the radius arms, which control obviously where it's positioned, you know, under the car this way in the guard and that sort of thing, and also control your caster angle. You also have, it doesn't count as it's not part of the link, but obviously your tie rod's gonna adjust your toe in and toe out, and that's all to do with your steering. So yeah, we'll whack this in now. All right, so just about to chuck the springs in just so, okay, so a few things we don't have, but we're putting the springs in anyway. We don't have bump stops. The ones that I pulled out were, one was torn, and not to mention because the spring tails at the top, because they're all rusted, the bolt on the top of the bump stop would just like literally turn into nothing. So I don't have bump stops yet, but I will be getting some eventually, but I don't need them yet because I'm gonna be changing out these springs anyway, so it doesn't matter. Also don't have the little rubbers that sit on top of the spring, but again, because I'm changing them, it doesn't really matter at the moment. So yeah, don't have them, but we're just gonna chuck them in anyway so we can keep it off, you know, settling all the way down and accidentally pinching a line or, you know, whatever. So we're gonna chuck the springs in quickly and then we can move on to the rear. That should be very simple. So anyway, let's chuck these in. Ah, easy, mate. Dropping coils. Why don't we get some coil retainers, Paddy? This is why we're doing this whole thing, just for these. This is why we're doing this whole thing, for these. For coils. It's the whole reason we're doing this.
It feels weird. You shouldn't own a car with coils in it. It doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right. All right.
Because there's no weight, that's literally it. That's on. Big dog.
Coily boy.
Yeah, coily boy. Now we just got to lift up the arse and put the rear diff in there. What I might do is jack this up, and if I jack up the rear end, I'll be able to roll the whole thing forward. And then if you push the front gently while I push the back, we'll just roll it forward a touch. Just have to stop it. Just go slow. Yeah, keep going. It's almost a rolling chassis.
It's so close to being a...
Keep going. That's not good. It's just going to be a big scuff mark.
Oh, it's not too bad.
You won't see it. Oh, so I can do it because it's an LSD. I can do it myself. Yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah.
So obviously, again, having a bigger lift, when you lift the car and you drag all your mounts come up, it's going to swing the diff in closer. So you want to keep the diff where it's meant to sit so that your coil sits straight up and down and all that. So you have to get elongated lower control arms. They don't normally do adjustable just because they're a pretty crucial part. I think they like to keep them solid. I'm assuming that's why anyway. So these are non-adjustable, but they're just extended by I think plus 11 maybe, or plus 15. I can't remember exactly. But essentially you extend them, and then you also have adjustable upper control arms, which you extend by the same amount, and that keeps your pinion, like your diff angles all good and all sweet, your uni angles and your pinion angle, yeah. All right, and it is also worth mentioning, people talk about it all the time, but you definitely don't want to get it wrong. If you look at these, I don't know if you can see that, the ends aren't straight. They have a very slight angle to them. Essentially what happens is the outside lower control arm mount along the chassis is wider than the two lower control arm mounts on the diff. So essentially you've got your arms have to run like that. So that's why those little angles are there, so that the bushings are sitting parallel, and then essentially, yeah, you're going wider to narrower. So you just got to keep that in mind when you put them in. All right, that's really pretty good there. Oh yeah, a lot going on there.
So when putting in the upper control arms, I set the length to the same as what the lower control arms are extended. So I added about 10 or 15 mil, and this should ensure that my pinion angle stays correct and that the diff's in the right position. I also use some of the provided grease to add to the bushes to ensure they move freely and don't get binded up in the mounts.
So it's got to come across. There you go, got it. All right, so everything's in. The panhard, we're not sure if we've got it aligned correctly, so we're just going to put the springs in. And yes, I know, because there's nothing there that's not going to weigh it down, but hopefully it's a rough indication of if we're on the right track. In. All right, and now you just got to complete the rest of the car.
Now we've got to put the car back together.
All right, so here it is. All, wow, I say all, like 80%, 90% of the suspension installed. It's on its own weight, it's on its own wheels. We got the springs in, we've got all the rear arms, all the front arms, and oh, it's so good to finally see something that actually resembles a car. And just a quick one too, if you can look under here and just have a look at just how much clearance there is with those Black Hawk arms, it's absolutely insane. Like I was saying to Paddy before, I reckon the drive shaft's gonna sit lower than them, just about. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's awesome and it looks unreal, and I'm sure it's going to drive just as well as it looks. So that's this stage of the suspension done for now. There's obviously still a lot to do, things to be added and all the rest, but for now I'm so happy with how it's looking. The Black Hawk stuff and the Fulcrum stuff is just all fit in and tied together so well. It just looks awesome. Yeah, so I'm just so keen to finish the rest of the build now. But anyway, we'll leave it there for now. So thanks for watching. Get subscribed so you make sure you can catch us in the next one, because we're going to be continue doing some awesome stuff on this thing. And yeah, thanks for watching.